Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Tuesday. I hope you're having a good day wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Thank you as always for joining me. I really do appreciate it. We've got a fair bit to talk about today, transfer-wise, as we're heading towards the end of the transfer window. Pretty mad to say that. Where has the time gone? Absolutely flown by. Big news today. Wouldn't say good news. Big news today. Tottenham are in for Eze. Not the news that I wanted to hear. I have to admit, news that I did expect as soon as I saw James Maddison get injured. So we'll talk about that. Rodrgyo potentially going to Manchester City. Two players, of course, who've been heavily linked with Arsenal throughout the summer. Eze, Rodrygo could well be going to Premier League rivals. So we'll talk about that. There's obviously been a bit of a reaction to it, which I can understand because these are two players, as I said, that Arsenal have been heavily linked to, and a lot of fans, myself included, certainly when it comes to Eze, has invested a lot of energy into thinking about the prospect of them lining up in the red and white next season, and to be playing for a rival, and especially a rival like Tottenham, might not go down too well. So we'll talk about that a little bit in the show. Going to talk about the fullback situation ahead of the game at Old Trafford on Sunday as well, when I think when you're looking at Arsenal's potential team selection, what Mikel's going to do in that opening game of the season against Manchester United, I think who he starts at fullback is going to be really, really interesting. There's a big battle there. On both sides of the defence. So I thought that was worth exploring. We've got some questions and comments from you guys as well. Just to reiterate, as I spoke about in yesterday's show, if you are not an Inside Arsenal member on Patreon yet and you want to join up and you want to do that this week to get in a chance of being in the FPL League this season for Inside Arsenal members, where you can get Manager of the Month prizes, overall season prizes as well, you need to do that. You need to sign up, become a member, join the community before the first deadline this week, which is Friday, whenever it is, the FPL deadline, because no new entrants will be added after that first deadline for the league. And you need to be an Inside Arsenal member to qualify for that league where all the prizes are going to be. I've also got a shirt competition running at the moment over on Patreon for members as well, which runs until Friday. So if you sign up and become a member before then, you can take part in that and put your name into the ring to win a shirt of your choice, which I'm doing to celebrate the start of the new season as well. Right, let's get started, shall we? And we will talk about Eberechi Eze. Now, as you've seen, it's not just Fabrizio, it's widespread reported today. Tottenham have started talks again with Eze's people and all that sort of stuff. Tottenham's interest in Eze has long been known. This isn't something new, but it had quietened a little bit. I think they were quite understanding. I would imagine that Arsenal were kind of at the front of the queue for Eze if he was going to go, and they've been watching from afar. But as soon as James Maddison got that injury over in the in Far East, I can't remember where it was. It might have been Singapore when they were playing Newcastle, wasn't it? As soon as he got that injury, I have to admit, I said to myself, Tottenham are going to go for Eze here. It just felt inevitable, and it seems like that is the case. Fabrizio there tweeting today, understand Tottenham are also back in talks for Eze in separate deal from Savinho, who they're also after. Spurs trying again for Eze whilst they work on Savinho following Maddison's injury and Son's exit. Eze keen, but deal depends on Palace as release clause has expired. I'm not sure about that. I said that in a show the other day, that depending on who you speak to, and I wouldn't be able to say 100% sure, but I don't think Eze's release clause has expired, or it depends who you speak to. Some people say it has, if you speak to them. Some people say it hasn't, and it expires in about 3 days' time. I think on the 15th that it expires. So I'm not sure it's set in stone for definite that release clause has expired yet. But either way, we'll wait and see what happens on it. But yeah, that's the latest today from Fabrizio, but it's been widespread reported. Sammy Motbell over the BBC's very close to the Eze camp, also reporting today that Spurs are in for him. And this would be a blow. I mean, look, I've sat here on these shows countless times in the last couple of months talking about why I just think Eze would be perfect for this Arsenal team. And I still absolutely think that. And I can understand, and I've seen the reaction today. There is disappointment. I've been chatting to Inside Arsenal members on the Discord this morning. We've all been talking about it. And you can sense the sort of frustration of potentially missing out on a player who I think we all agree would be, well, maybe not all, but the majority would agree would be very, very handy for this team right now. He just brings, and I think this is why I really like the idea of Eze Arsenal. I just think he brings that sort of unpredictability, that maverick type quality that they don't really have in the squad right now. So much reliance on Martin Odegaard when it comes to creativity from central areas. If you add Eze into the mix, yes, he plays off the left at times, but you add Eze onto the mix, you just take that burden off Odegaard at times as well. And I just think he's that type of player, again, with a low block, which I think a lot of Arsenal's transfer business this summer has been about trying to negate the low block. I think what we're seeing tactically from Arsenal, again, in pre-season, certainly the game at the weekend, is about sort of trying to negate the low block issues that they've got. Eze would be perfect at doing that as well. He's just another player who could come in and really help Arsenal solve the issues that they've come up against. And so it would be a big blow. But as I spoke about yesterday, there is a need, and this isn't football manager time. You just can't keep going out and signing players without bringing any money in. And there is a need for Arsenal to sell players. I couldn't sit here for certain right now and say if Arsenal sold Trossard or if Arsenal sold Zinchenko and Kivior and brought in £50 million, they would definitely sign Eze. But it would absolutely help them go out and do that. There's no doubt about it. They've spent an awful lot of money this summer, and they haven't really brought any in. You do need to balance the books at times. And it feels like right now, because of the business Arsenal have done, and you can question some of the business. Some people will point to Madueke and be like, why have we spent 50 million on Madueke, a player who's predominantly a right-sided player, when we needed to really fix someone on the left? You know, we've seen Madueke play on the left the last couple of times. I do think that is a position that he's going to play an awful lot for Arsenal this season. But selling players is very, very important for Arsenal right now. And whether that ends up stopping them going for Eze, we'll have to see. You know, maybe Tottenham moving will spark Arsenal into life, and they'll think, you know what, sod it, we can do without selling players. Let's just go out and get him and make sure that we get him and Spurs don't. We'll have to wait and see on it. I feel like that probably won't happen. I have to say, I can't see them reacting to Spurs' interest and just thinking, you know what, let's just go and do it anyway. I'd be surprised, but we'll have to wait and see. And it's not just Eze either. It's Rodrgyo, who, another player, certainly at the start of the window, where there was lots of expectation almost that Arsenal were going to make this big blockbuster type signing, the type of signing that we don't really see Arsenal do too often. And he would be, there's no doubt about that, because of the name, the stature, where he's coming from. It would be an absolute blockbuster type signing for Arsenal had they gone out and got Rodrygo. But you look at the finances involved, and yes, Man City now moving on Grealish, potentially moving on Savinho to Spurs. And Fabrizio's reporting that they are very, very keen on Rodrygo. Pep really, really wants him, but he's saying about 100 million that the Real Madrid are wanting for him, and that's before you even consider the wages and everything like that. That always felt like a pretty hard deal for Arsenal to do money-wise. And it wouldn't surprise me if after all of this, it ends up being a club like Manchester City that can afford it for Rodrygo. I mean, I'm in the Eze camp over Rodrygo anyway. I have to say, people aren't, you know, people won't agree with that. Some people won't. Some people will. But I think if you, in the same week, give or take, if you see a player like Eze go to Spurs and you see a player like Rodrygo go to Manchester City, I can just imagine what the reaction is going to be like. Put it that way. I can absolutely imagine what it's be like. So let me throw this out to you guys. Tell me your thoughts on this right now. Should that happen, how would you view it? Do you think Arsenal should react to this interest from Eze, from Spurs in Eze? Should they react to that? Should they make a move for him and try and get this deal done for him? Because it still sounds like if you were offering Eze Arsenal Spurs, where are you going to go? He would choose Arsenal. So should they take advantage of that and just make a move? Let me know your thoughts on it all in the comments below. Right, let's throw things forward till Sunday, shall we? I can't believe we're that close to the start of the new season. How nice is that to think of? And what a huge game, massive game. What a curtain raiser it is. Manchester United versus Arsenal at Old Trafford. Press conference, I think, is going to be Friday. We still haven't had notification yet from Arsenal in terms of the actual press conference, but word is it's going to be 1 p.m. on Friday. And it'll be very interesting to hear what Mikel's got to say ahead of that game. His team selection, definitely interesting. I think the fullback situation is the one that really, really intrigues me right now in terms of who starts at fullback for this game. Again, please do let me know in the comments below your views on this. What should Arsenal's back four be against Manchester United? Both sides of the defence, there's such competition there now. You know, Calafiori has played a lot in pre-season. When he's been fit, when he's been available, Arteta has used him a lot, whether that be at centre-back or at left-back in pre-season. He got the spot on Saturday against Athletic Club and produced a really interesting 45-minute performance at left-back in that role, playing almost as a left eight, to be honest, at times with the Rice and Zubimendi sort of double pivot partnership that we saw in midfield. And he played very, very well. And, I said it yesterday, I think Calafiori this season, if he stays fit, and I know it's a big if, but if he does, I think he can offer so much to this team, whether it be starting, whether it be coming off the bench to try and change things up, because he is just a chaos merchant. He brings something that no one else brings to this squad. You can imagine he confuses the hell out of opposition teams. He probably confuses the hell out of his own teammates at times where he pops up in the positions he finds himself in. Does he start at Old Trafford? Or do you go with Miles? At the end of last season, Miles absolutely had that shirt. It was his own. I don't think Miles has had the best of pre-seasons. I don't think he's looked absolutely at that sort of form that we saw when he was just bullying the likes of Manchester City and Real Madrid last season. Calafiori, meanwhile, I think has had a good pre-season. So I think there's more of a question there than I probably expected there to be at the start of the summer in terms of who starts at Old Trafford. I wouldn't be surprised if Calafiori starts at left back now. I'm going to give it a couple of days before I do my predicted 11, but I would not be surprised if Calafiori gets that starting spot at left back, given how good I thought he looked for that in that first half last week. The fact he got the start in that game as well, I thought could be potentially pretty telling in it. And we know Arteta trusts Lewis Skelly completely. You think whoever starts in that position is going to be up against Bryan Mbeumo at the weekend, seasoned professional, experienced Premier League player looking to make his a big impact on his sort of home competitive debut for his new club. So he's going to be up for it. And he's going to be a threat. We know he scores goals. He sets up goals. He scored against Arsenal last season. He does cause problems for Arsenal and other teams. So whoever plays in that position is going to have to really watch him. Do you go with probably the more defensively sound, I would say, player? I don't know. Probably slightly more defensively sound and solid player in Lewis Skelly at left back? Or do you go with that chaos merchant in Calafiori who could offer so much to Arsenal going forward and really confuse Manchester United down that side? Really interesting on that. And I think it's interesting on right back as well. Ben White has had a good summer. Jurriën Timber's still working his way back to fitness. Do you start Timber or do you start Ben White? I think probably Ben White gets the nod in this one when I'm looking at the fullback situation. So right now, I'm leaning towards White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori as my starting back four for the game against Manchester United. As I said, I'm not going to do my predicted 11 yet. Still a long way off, but I think that's where I'm leaning towards. Give me your thoughts on that in terms of what do you think Arsenal should do at the fullback situation? That's before we even get on to who's going to play up front. Is it going to be Havertz? Is it going to be Gyökeres? Is Madueke going to force his way in on the left-hand side, or are you going to start with Martinelli? There's loads to debate when it comes to Arsenal starting 11. I'm sitting down with Simon Collins tomorrow for the Arsenal Press Pass show. Sam, by the way, for all Inside Arsenal members, Sam is now on paternity leave for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to be filling his spot with a different sort of guest every single week on the Press Pass show. And so three of us will be sitting down tomorrow and debating, I think, looking further ahead to that Manchester United game. There's lots to talk about. But yeah, the fullback situation, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment below. Who starts? Who gets the nod at the back four? Right, moving on to some questions and comments now before we wrap this one up. Here's one from Obez. He says, "Hi, Charles. You were a huge Nico Williams fan and wanted Arsenal to get him as your number one choice. Now all the hype has died down. Reality is set in and we've seen him play against us and look very, very ordinary. Has your view on him as a massive upgrade on Martinelli changed, even though Martinelli had considerably more goal involvements last season in a much tougher league than Nico?" I'm not sure I ever said he was a massive upgrade on Martinelli. I don't think I ever said that. I think I always argued the case that Martinelli's numbers stacked up pretty well comparing to Nico Williams. But I did want Nico Williams. He's a player that really does excite me. I don't look at what he did against Arsenal last week and think, that was a reason. Arsenal have dodged a bullet there or anything. And I look at Zubimendi as sort of case in point here. When you look at Zubimendi in that Sociedad team and you watch him, some of his performances last year, and people looked at him and said, he looks very, very ordinary. But then as soon as you see Zubimendi play for Spain, he looks an absolute world beater. And then you see him play for Arsenal, he looks a world beater. Whenever you see Nico Williams play for Spain, he looks like a world beater. But then he goes back to the athletic side and maybe it just doesn't quite look as good. So you put him in a better side with quality players, better players, and it will immediately raise his level. So I don't take too much into account what I saw from him last week. has my opinion on his on him changed? I would still love Nico Williams at Arsenal. No, so that hasn't changed for me, I have to say. But there's certainly other options out there who I'd be equally as pleased with when it comes to the left-hand side at Arsenal. And the money situation was always a bit of an issue with Nico Williams as well. And I can understand why Arsenal weren't too willing to go for what he was demanding. Mr. Quenda says, what are your thoughts on the rumours of a loan with an obligation for Rodrgyo in a scenario where we sell Nelson, Trossard and maybe Jesus in January? That does leave open enough space for another winger, also bearing in mind the club view as a 10. I mean, look, loan obligation for Rodrygo, if Arsenal could agree that, then 100% I'd take him. Of course I would. As I said earlier, I still feel if it's sort of one or the other out of Eze and Rodrygo, I'd fall slightly towards the Eze side of things. But that's just personal opinion, obviously. But yeah, if Arsenal can get a deal done with a loan and obligation to sign him next summer, then absolutely get him. He's a quality player. If the opportunity arises to sign someone like Rodrygo, you have to take it, in my view. But it does appear anyway that maybe the chances of that happening are lessening by the day, especially if Manchester City are now in for him. Why? I'm not sure Real would be too keen to accept that sort of agreement. Anyway, if they're going to get rid of Rodrygo this summer, I think they'd want the money in for him now rather than kicking it down the line 12 months and agreeing a loan deal. I'm surprised if that's what they would do. KA says, I'd sell both Leo, Gabby, who I really like, Kivior and Zinni if we could, and I get Leao. I think we need a proper game breaker upgrade on the left and a decent backup, and we'd have that with Leao, Noni and Reece. And to those who write him off, didn't see him at Fulham last year, really think we missed out, and Hato would be perfect as a left-back, left centre-back. Leao's interesting. Look, I like everyone else. Whenever you watch Leao, you think, God, he's a good player. He's really exciting. The way he runs with the ball is, he's powerful, he's direct, runs with the ball, beats his man. On paper, he's got everything you want as a winger. But I do think it's interesting that no one seems to be really pushing the boat out to try and sign him each year. So people who are far cleverer and have far more of a sort of football eye than I do, and these big money analysts and all that sort of stuff, still doesn't seem like anyone's banging on the door of a real, one of Europe's other top clubs and saying, go and sign this guy from Milan, go and get that deal done. And I just wonder why that is happening, because he does, whenever I watch Leao, I just think, he'd be a lot of fun at Arsenal. You would imagine it's probably maybe the defensive capabilities and all that. We know how important that is to Mikel Arteta team. We know how important it is to get in terms of what he demands from Gabriel Martinelli and even Leandro Trossard when he's playing. Can Leao do that? I don't know. But I wouldn't be rushing out to sell this summer all four of those players. I think that could be an issue. And I do think Reece will go. I know Reece did well at Fulham, as you pointed out last year, but I'm not sure Reece is going to be here in the summer. I think this is the summer you look to get a deal done for Reece and get some money in for him if you can. Right, one here from Dradge, who says, I'm still unsure about Calafiori. He's injury prone and error prone. He often gets caught out of position defensively. Yes, he goes on swashbuckling runs and does some great things, his goal at City being a good example. But to win the league, it comes down to who gets the rubber to green with those little errors. Remember Zinchenko away at Liverpool a couple of seasons ago, making us concede a corner due to sloppy play, and we ended up with 1 point instead of all three. I feel like Calafiori will have a couple of those mistakes in his season. I mean, if you're going over the course of a season and you're only pointing out a couple of mistakes, then that's not too bad for a defender. I mean, sometimes you have to balance out a few defensive errors for what else these sort of players bring to the team. I use Trent, for example, not the best defender in the world. And I don't want to compare Trent to Calafiori, because what Trent did at Liverpool, the numbers that he put out, the assists he got, it was incredible. And Calafiori's just not going to do that. Well, I don't think he's going to do that. But again, Liverpool balanced out the defensive issues, the goals that they would sometimes concede because of Trent's positioning or defensive capabilities. And they balanced that out with, but look at what he's going to do to us in the final third. Look what he's going to cause oppositions. And I think when you're looking at someone like Calafiori, who maybe defensively yet is not the best, but he's still what he can bring to the team, how he can change a game, how he can stretch the opposition and drag players out of position. Sometimes you have to kind of balance it out a little bit. So I'm really excited by him if he can stay fit this season, I have to say. And you always have to counter everything you say about Calafiori with if he can stay fit. And fingers crossed he can. Right, finally, one from Richard. I do think that we need to consider sophomore slumps for Ethan and Miles this season. You could see it happening at the end of April and May. I definitely don't think either will get the starts or minutes they got last year. Interesting there. I think we saw that towards the end of last season with Ethan, certainly, and maybe we're seeing it to a certain extent with Miles so far this summer. I don't know about Ethan though. I think he might have come through that already. You know, I think there's a big role for Ethan to play this season. You know, he's just signed his new contract. He looks strong physically. He looks big now. He looks ready. I think he's been one of Arsenal's best players in the summer, pre-season wise. He's playing in that central role. I think he has to get minutes there because the addition of Madueke, yes, who's so far we've seen on the left, but the addition of Madueke, you know, if something happens to Saka or Saka needs resting, rotating, you would think Madueke is going to be that guy. It's not going to be Ethan this season like it was in the second half of last season. So to get minutes, he's going to have to play in that central area, in that Odegaard position, where maybe last year Arteta wasn't too keen on playing him there, didn't really trust him to be able to do a lot of the off-the-ball stuff that Odegaard does. But you have to give the trust to that player at some point. You know, when you've got a talent as big as Ethan, who is just a mammoth talent, clearly, you look at the numbers of what he put up last season was incredible for a player his age. You've got to start playing him. And I think he's come through that. I think maybe we saw his little slump at the end of last season. I think what I'm seeing from Ethan so far this summer is a player who looks physically a lot more ready. I think he looks like he's matured a little bit with his game as well. He's going to have to get used to it. You can't expect him to do everything that Odegaard does. He's a captain on the team. But I do think when Odegaard does have drops off in form or does need a rest, I think Mikel this summer is going to have to show a lot more trust in Ethan, and I think he will. And I think a lot of those conversations would have been had during the contract talks with Ethan to make sure he signed this new 5-year contract. And I think ultimately Arteta is going to have to really show his trust in Ethan, and I certainly hope he will anyway this season. But I agree with Miles, you know, what he did at the end of last year was incredible. He can't at that sort of age maintain that. There's going to be a dip. Of course there is. It's going to happen. And that's why I think Calafiori is so important this season. Stay fit, make sure he's there so you can rotate those minutes with Miles, and you don't have to rely on such a young kid as much as they did in the second half of last season, although he did the job absolutely fantastically during that period. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it as always. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Remember, if you want to sign up to become an Inside Arsenal member, the description is down there. The link is down there in the description. Copy and paste it into your browser. Do it straight via Patreon. Don't do it via Apple or anything like that because they had their little surcharges. So do it straight via Patreon. Become an Inside Arsenal member. Join the FPL League. Get involved in all the prizes that you can potentially win this summer and get all the other exclusive extra content you can get by becoming an Inside Arsenal member. Take it easy, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.